Hello and welcome to a wonderful special episode of House of Decline. It's an anime episode. You love our anime episodes, you fans. You wonderful House of Decline fans. And with us, as always, is Steven.
Hello.
And in the house today, we got Lux and Griffin from the Gameboiz Podcast.
What up?
Yo.
How you guys doing today? How you feeling?
I overslept until, I'll be honest, I was asleep until 11:45 my time, which is 15 minutes before we were recording this podcast.
Hell yeah, that rules.
I slept right through my alarm.
And I underslept preparing for this arduous task ahead of us.
I can confirm that too, because I woke up and I had a text from Griffin that was at 8 a.m. my time, which is 6 a.m. your time.
Because, to be fair, every alarm in my house went off for the Kingdom Hearts 4 trailer.
Kingdom Hearts 4. Hearts 4.
The window turned into metal panels that went down. There was red lights and buzzing, and I had no idea what was going on. And then all of a sudden, Kingdom Hearts 4. Holy shit!
I woke up, opened my phone, saw what time it was, went to text Griffin, being like, "Oh shit, I just woke up." And the first thing I saw in the text thread was Kingdom Hearts 4! Exclamation point. And I just said, "Oh no," and then turned off my phone for 10 minutes while I fed the dogs.
They incorporated the Roman numeral 4 into the heart. It's amazing.
They did? Oh my god.
They did.
They did, and I had trouble understanding at first I was like, is that a 3? No, it's a 4.
It's a 4. There's a little V there. There's a little V. Oh my god.
A bit of a tangent, but the best franchise for including the number of the movie in the text of the title is Scream, for sure. Because if you start with Scream 5, you can get 5 cream, then Esker 4M,
yeah, of course.
then Scraw 3, then Scraw 2M, or Scraw 2M, and then Scream regular.
Well, that's going to be a perfect lead-in for what I think the sequel to what we're talking about today would be called, and that would be Shingeki 2 Kyojin.
Or Attack of Tujin.
yeah, Attack on Tujin. 2 Shingeki 2 Kyojin. We're talking about Attack on Titan. You know it. You love it. Its penultimate season has just finished ending, and we're waiting to get to the next one, which is coming in 2023. But people are back on the Attack on Titan train, and we want to go over the show just because we're interested in it. We think it's interesting how popular it is, given how controversial the material is. And we think the show actually has a lot to say. People say the author, Hajime Isayama, is kind of dumb. I disagree. I think he's actually pretty fucking smart, but also might have some weird beliefs. But we're gonna get into it. So, Attack on Titan. We're just going to give a short summary of the plot right now.
Sorry to interrupt, but I prepared to debate the fascism of Kingdom Hearts. So sorry.
We could get into that. We could absolutely get into that.
Let me just also say, Alex on Friday was like, hey, can you watch all of Attack on Titan by Sunday? And I was like, no.
It's really good. You'll get into it.
I watched the first 2 episodes this morning, and then I read the Wikipedia. So
nice.
I know you don't have to over-explain on my account.
So
I'm actually an expert now. So.
That's all you need. All you need are the wikis to get the gist. Because the gist is pretty good. It's a pretty good mystery.
And honestly, my big argument on this episode will be that you shouldn't watch the show. You should only read tweets that are negative about it.
Yes.
And that counts as consuming art.
Absolutely. You only need to read negative criticisms. That is, don't watch things. Only read negative criticisms of things.
Try to just disengage from content, and including this podcast.
Yeah, don't listen to this. Float into the void. Become a Titan. Inject spinal fluid, Titan spinal fluid, into your Jewish body.
And then get huge.
Yeah, get absolutely
That's what I'm working
swole.
on.
Exactly. Maybe Titans are a metaphor for juicing in the NFL. Oh, you're right. Yeah. They are swag. So a plot summary.
The gas.
Yeah, sorry.
We have a little German boy named. He's not German. They're we don't know what race they are. Actually, we kind of do because there are Japanese people in it. It's weird. It's a weird show. So Aaron Kruger. He's in his little village that's inside this gigantic wall, and one day, this colossal Titan attacks. This Titan that's bigger than their 200-foot wall kicks down the wall, and a bunch of these other Titans come scrambling in. And what Titans are, these giants, these unthinking giants that eat humans, except for the colossal Titan who appears to be thinking. And then another Titan that appears to be thinking, an armored Titan, comes and bursts through another wall. These Titans run amok in Aaron's town, and they eat. One of these Titans eats his mom right in front of him. And so there he vows revenge against the Titans. He joins the Army Corps, and they use this very funny equipment called 3D maneuvering equipment.
Your ODM gear.
Your ODM gear, of course. Your ODM gear.
Omnidirectional gear.
And that's one of the things that, attracts people to the series, because especially in the anime, the ODM gear, very dynamic, very cool sequences you do with it. The best sequences are, in fact, with just Levi just going through the streets running through ODM gear. So Aaron joins the army, and he joins this corps and meets all these nice friends in the army, and who are all devoted to getting Titans, and everyone tells him their story of how they wanted to fight the Titans. He goes out on a mission. No. First off, then Aaron discovers.
Oh.
I'm hitting a block.
It's the attack on Trost.
It's the attack on Trost. That's it. You lead us off, Griffin.
Where they're fighting in one of their first battles, and it's basically child soldiers. These people are like teenagers, and it goes really poorly, and a lot of kids die. But in that skirmish, Aaron becomes the attack Titan for the first time, discovering that he has the power to transform into a Titan, and it's our first example of a human having the Titan power.
The attack Titan being a giant Titan with big teeth who looks a little bit like sort of a Mick Jagger Titan.
Yeah, he's cool. He's super cool because he's got a strong jaw and elf ears.
He does it is like elfin ears, yeah.
Yeah, he has the big pointy nose and long hair. He's very elf-like, similar to Mick Jagger.
So, exactly. So after Trost, he joins the what are they called? They're led by the Survey Corps, and what they do is they go outside the walls in order to explore the geography of the land around them and find an origin of the Titans. And Survey Corps trips are just everyone gets wrecked, because they're just surrounded by Titans on all sides. And there in the Survey Corps, he meets Commander Irwin and Levi, the greatest Titan fighter of them all. I'm also skipping over his girlfriend, Mikasa, because she's the best Titan fighter in the world, but she's super boring. She's the least interesting character in the whole thing. So Aaron gets totally fucked up, and everyone dies on his first Survey Corps outing. They go back, and it turns out one of their friends, Annie, also has the power to transform into a Titan, and she turns into the female Titan, and they fight, and then she encases herself in crystal rather than go down. Season 2. So season 2 is fucking crazy. You just so you learn that a bunch of Aaron's other friends were the Colossal Titan and the Armored Titan that invaded that invaded Aaron's town to begin with in the beginning.
The Shinigami district.
Yes, exactly. And you also learn that Aaron's other friend from the Corps, this Corps is just filled with significant people. You learn that Aaron's other friend is
it's the only corps that like has anything worth doing. All the other corps are literally fake jobs.
Yeah, because
people admit that like
either you're like a guard who stays in town, or you're a military police who exploits your power to get free booze.
Yeah,
or you're a scout. Those are the three jobs you can have.
Yeah, there's like not much worth in invading those ranks.
Yeah, there's some Walrose version of David Graeber going, why are we so unhappy right now? Why are the military police so unhappy? Bullshit jobs.
When did the military police lose their swag?
Yeah. Season 2 and 3 are largely about basically learning about the history and learning that the actual history of the origin of the Titans and what they are has been covered up, specifically by this guy called Rod Rice, who is who has royal blood, and only people with royal blood are basically allowed to know the origin of the Titans. And so seasons 2 and 3 are about uncovering this mystery. And finally, at the end of season 3, you figure out the origin of the Titans. Now, there's like a lot of stuff that happens, and I'm glossing over a lot of stuff, but that's the basic arc. There are lots of individual character stories that we can get into later. Specifically in season 2, it's like my favorite story in the entire series, about Ymir and her love for Historia. That's super interesting. I've never seen that in a shonen anime before.
It's a good lesbian relationship in like a AAA anime.
And really well-written characters.
If there's one thing I could just quickly summarize about seasons 2 and 3, I mean, just in like a one-line sentence, season 1 seems to be like the enemy is everywhere outside. Season 2 seems to be like the enemy is among us. And then season 3 seems to be like the enemy is the stories we tell each other.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, history and the arc of history and who creates history is perhaps the biggest theme of the show. So, season 3, you learn the secret of the Titans, and the Titans are actually humans. They're humans that are of a race called Eldians, and Eldians can transform into Titans if you inject Titan spinal fluid into their spines. If you do that to a regular Eldian, they'll turn into one of the mindless Titans. But there are also 9 sentient Titans, who are 9 pieces of the original big Titan. And these sentient Titans can get Titan powers by eating the previous sentient Titan. So there's the Colossal Titan, the Armored Titan, the Jaw Titan. Eren is one of them, the Attack Titan. And, there's 5 others that...
Hammer Titan, Beast Titan, Card Titan.
We love the Card Titan. Yeah.
Card Titan rips. We love the Card Titan.
So upon learning this, Eren goes nuts. Eren like vows revenge against the world for doing this to his people. And it's actually so the Eldians in the world around them are an oppressed class of people. So oppressed because in the past, apparently, they had used their Titan powers to run amok and destroy the world. And then it got to a royal called King Fritz, who was so ashamed by what he did that he basically consigned the Eldians to this island called Paradise Island. And the Eldians who were left in the mainland became second-class citizens because of their associated history. And it turns out that the Colossal Titan and the Armored Titan were members of this society. They are Eldians who are militarized against Paradise Island because the outside world is still trying to destroy the Eldians because they see them as a disease.
And you could kind of describe the Titans, I would say, in a more simpler real-world term as like nukes. Like there is this island of this one race who originated and invented the nukes, but now some of the other countries have a nuke or two. And everyone is kind of unsure of like that power stasis, like that, and like where everyone stands there.
Yeah, and it's so weird because it combines nukes with biopolitics in this very strange, like, I think it's super interesting. I think that, even no matter what you think of the author, like the connections that he makes are they make you think. So, now Eren is locked in this battle against the outside world. Remind me of the big nation that he's fighting. Marley, yeah.
Oh, I thought that was a person.
No, it's a nation.
Wikipedia.
It's a weird name for a country. It's like calling that country Eric.
Hey, there is a country called Chad. So
I know. As I said that.
So the 4th season is all about Eren's war. Eren has effectively become the military leader and leads a faction called the Jaegerists. I guess this doesn't come till much later because in the beginning, it's the Eldian political class that is in favor of war against the Marleyans.
There's a lot of political complications, certainly. But I think the big question to this season for everyone who lives on the island is, what do we do in this scenario where a lot of the world considers us monsters that need to be destroyed? And everyone has very different political beliefs on how they should do that. Some people believe that they should kill all their enemies. Some people believe in creating some sort of truce. And all of that kind of falls apart into chaos.
Yeah. Especially because season 4 is cool because it's
starts with this like perspective switch where you follow a bunch of Marley and youths for a while, and you see what
fucked the audience. It like was a fucking electric shock to the audience because it's like, wait, where are my characters I care about? You're forcing me to care about the people on the other side of the war. This is so narratively disconcerting for me as an audience member, but that's the whole point of the show, actually.
Yeah.
And
it's the historiography stuff, and which we'll get into more in a sec. But like, you see it from their perspective, and then that season sort of culminates in Eren. It turning out that Eren and the Beast Titan Zeke are brothers or half brothers. And then Eren is ostensibly supporting Zeke in his grand euthanasia plan to use the Founding Titan's power to make sure that no Eldians can ever have a baby ever again.
Yeah.
So there's one route where it's like one character, a lot of characters want to do different things. Zeke wants to do this sort of like self-annihilation like path. We discover that Eren wants to do a path where he's going to kill everyone except the Eldians. And then other people are struggling to find the third way.
Yeah. And then these political tensions, they mount, and because Eren receives just the most power by happenstance, just by luck, which is like another thing that the show is about, how just things just happen. And
well, it's not by luck, actually. As we discover in this season, he does it of his own volition, even things in the past before he was born. Or before
but there are questions of still who is in control. Is it Eren? Is it the past? Is it everyone in the past that's motivating him to do? It's like you never know who's in control, actually, and that's very much part of the show. So it escalates to where the anime stops is. Where it just stopped was Eren has decided to do the rumbling, which means that he's crumbling the walls. He's crumbling the walls of Paradise Island down, and in the walls are colossal titans. Hundreds and hundreds of colossal titans, gigantic beasts which have the powers of, forget one nuke, a million nukes.
Apparently they can swim, which was a very funny image, and I tried not to laugh. I tried to keep it serious while they were swimming.
Are they like hollow inside?
The only reason them swimming works is that when they heat up the water and boil the people in that boat alive, and then you're like, okay, now this feels scary, but at first it's just sort of like, this is so stupid.
It was an amazing image.
I mean, that is the tension with Titans, though, because they look stupid, but it's that stupid lookingness that also makes them uncanny and terrifying as well.
Exactly. And I don't know if anyone here has seen the live-action Japanese Attack on Titan movie. Has anyone here seen that?
I have not seen that.
Okay, well, they really fucked up the Titans in that because essentially what they did was, as opposed to like make like weird, creepy, like humanoid creatures, they just like did a Craigslist casting for like middle-aged Japanese men and women, and then just took their clothes off and had them stand in front of a green screen. So it just looks like the lady at the supermarket naked, just like eating people, and it's the worst thing I've ever seen.
That sounds pretty good. I might have to see that, actually.
I recommend. High recommend. But so that's what we're talking about.
That was we just basically completed to the plot up to where the anime ends. I've read the manga. I know how the manga ends. That's super polarizing. So I know that's kind of a spoiler, but it's not really a spoiler because it's like you'll take what
So what I've heard about the ending, and me and Lux have not read the manga, so we don't know the full ending. We are anime watchers. What I hear is that Isayama tried to cram in a very long message very shortly, and that potentially could have spent even more time on the ending, and that it feels like cramped in terms of its ideology and how much he tried to fit in there at the end. But
I used to think that.
Okay.
But now, after letting it stew for a while, I think it's actually brilliant. I think it actually ended perfectly.
Okay, interesting.
And I think the reason why people don't know what to make of it is because what Attack on Titan represents is something very, very rare to me. You guys could have a totally different opinion, but what it is it's a critique of right-wing politics by a guy who is sympathetic to them. And the only other piece of media I can think that's similar to that is John Milius's Rome,
Sure.
and which also has, you know, like a lot of overarching themes of historiography and friend-enemy distinction and stuff like that. So that's what we're going to go into now, is the major themes of Attack on Titan. And so first off, I've got written down is, who controls history? Historiography. What's this all about? Thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, well, that is like, especially in season sort of 3 and 4 in particular, but throughout the whole show, this is like a really central idea, just because you constantly, like, so a big part we can get into in the plot outline in season 3 is then in season 2. I can't fucking remember because it all blurs together.
They're like the same season to me, yeah.
Yeah, also, like, my experience with the show also, it's, I watched it all as it came out, but also I keep having to rewatch it for work, and I have to rewatch it for work in, like, super fast mode, or I watch all the episodes in, like, 3 days. So I have the seasonal distinction is very much lost on me at this point, but at one point, sort of when Eren has to go into the weird ritual cave and learn about, and learn about the past, what we learn is that, like, various people throughout time have created versions of the past and made people forget things and are literally erased events from people's psyches and have rewritten history to maintain a status quo that makes sense. And that's like a thing that people talk about now, myself included, is this idea that like history as it's mainstream produced, as it's like mainstream production represents itself.
It's written by the winners.
Not just written by the winners, but written to, because it's not always written by the people who won the war, but it gets rewritten by new winners over time, right? So, like, for instance, a lot of the narrative of 40s, 50s America used to be this, like, united, super strong, unified force, and that was the way that 1940s, 50s Americans depicted it, and then used that tie into the Cold War and whatnot. And after the Cold War, it is suddenly nowadays depicted very much as a time of total freedom and economic, like, movement and liberty, which was just absolutely not the case, right? That was like a peak of, that was sort of high union density, labor regulations, worker organizations, etc. So the way that history isn't just written by the winners of like a given war, but rewritten and rewritten and rewritten to justify the most power beneficial status quo possible is a really interesting thing within Attack on Titan, because there haven't been major conflicts really since the initial giant conflict. Yeah. And the role of the world, both in the way Marley talks about Paradise Island and the way people in Paradise Island talk about themselves, changes over that time and is rewritten and reerased and reconstructed. It's very interesting and it's very effective, I think, as far as like...
I would even go a little farther, that like there is that history element and sort of in terms of more Attack on Titan specifics, like a lot of the show is like, so there are certain mysteries that the show does spend time uncovering, but I think the show makes the larger point that despite all of these histories, the people now in the present are human and deserving of empathy. And I think that like people do wrongs, certain people did bad things in the past, the Eldians have done bad things in the past, the Marleyans have done bad things in the past, and they're all telling different stories. And at the end of the day, like all that stuff is irrelevant because the people now like deserve empathy and love, and there needs to be a new path forward, I think. And so like caring super much, like the caring about history, like to a certain extent, like they're almost saying their history should, you know, be respected, but we can't be trapped in it.
Yeah, well, they're right. And they're saying in particular that history changes in a way to make that trap like inescapable or difficult to escape. That history adapts in a way that makes it so that it justifies the world that people are in, and which makes breaking out of those cycles increasingly difficult. And I think that's like a really interesting observation, especially paired with this most recent season where they showed us like the origin of the Titans and the origin of the Eldians, where a blind girl touches a worm in a pool and turns into a Titan and then becomes a machine of war. Yeah. And it's very clear almost immediately, right, from that all of the narrativization of the Titans as these, like, willfully violent entities.
Devils or angels that were given by some god or anything. No, none of that.
Or like war leaders independently on their own. Even that isn't real. Like, they were manipulated and abused people whose powers were used as weapons, blah, blah, blah. And so all of the historical accounts we know to be bullshit. But, and this is, I think, why I push back on the characterization of the show as a fascist text. I don't really give a shit if the guy who wrote it's a fascist or not. But I push back on the show being a fascist text largely because so much of it is dedicated to these constructed histories put people in these loops of violence, and these violence loops always benefit an empowered class. Yeah. and that the actual mechanism by which freedom of any real meaningful kind exists is to escape these violent loops.
And there's even a sense of like that the violent loops, almost like capitalism, cannot go forever, and that these violent loops will not loop forever, but into an ultimate destruction of all humanity. Like capitalism can't keep like going profit up every year. Like there is a ceiling to all this. Like the bubble is going to burst. Like the weight is going to give out, and just like that with this like violent system of imperialism, like you can't, like there can't just you can't get going forever, because eventually the whole world's going to get nuked.
Just continuing to exist in a world of nukes, which are emblematic of the violent imperialism of the world. There's a ceiling to this. We're all going to die because of it one day eventually. I think what it's also good is how people use these stories, even if they know them to be false, to justify what they want to do emotionally. Because what Aaron is driven more than by anything else is a feeling, not by anything rational. And he even sort of, there's this great speech. He's talking to Reiner, the guy that betrayed him from Marley, one of the Titan capos.
A character that many people don't like, but I think
Reiner is what are you talking about? Reiner's the best fucking character in the series.
People complain about Reiner so much on internet.
The internet hates the best characters. They don't like Gabby or
the internet doesn't like Gabby or Reiner, and it's crazy to me.
I mean, Gabby has like the 360 no scope god ability. So
she's a propagandized child. That's amazing.
Propagandized child with like if this were baseball, she'd have 80s across the board and like aim, gunpowder, speed.
She's Steeben. She's the Dave Steeb of propagandized fascist children.
She's doing like 100K tourneys in CSGO, like if it's today. Like she's low-key cracked at it. Yeah.
She's FaZe Clan. She's FaZe Clan.
She's absolutely FaZe Clan.
History, and I think so we get to the paths, right? Mm-hmm. And the paths are these things that connect all Titans. So the original Titan, Ymir, basically controls all the Eldians from the past. But then it's sort of uncertain if she's controlling them or if it's more this dialogue between all the Eldians and her that creates this sort of driving force of narrative. And that's, another big question that the show asks, and I think is very interested in, is what drives somebody to commit genocide? What makes a man start fires, but on the largest scale? And I think what Isayama presents is this sort of idea that people are driven by this arc of history, this fatalistic arc of history that tells you that there is an existential threat to you, and there is no way to solve it other than by eliminating that existential threat. You can't reason with it. Isayama has even said that his inspiration for Attack on Titan is he was like working in as a barista or something, and he got into a fight with somebody who was much larger than him.
Yeah, it's like a drunk guy.
Yeah, and he was like, that fear of...
He was a naked Titan.
Yeah. But fighting with...
A 14-foot naked guy walked into the izakaya where
he worked. Peeking over like a small ledge, just like the Colossal Titan.
Yeah.
And something you can't reason with. Or you get it in your head from the arc of history that this is something that can't be reasoned with. You have to take it out. And sort of the escalating nature of that idea and how it self-perpetuates through this grinding, unstoppable wheel of history.
Mm-hmm. So this is actually a segue. I mean, Griffin will testify that almost anything about Attack on Titan is a segue to who I think is the most important Attack on Titan character, but I think this is a good one.
Which is Gabby's dad.
Sasha's dad.
Sasha's dad. Sorry. Yeah.
Sasha's dad. So Sasha, for those who don't know, is like the sort of heart of the Jaeger scout team, like Aaron's team when he's in the Jaegers. She's
comic relief as well, like from in the direness of season 1, like one of the only laugh lines is like Sasha's like trying to eat a potato like at the military lineup, and like is always trying to eat in really dire situations, and frankly that energy was really necessary.
Yeah, she's like necessary comic relief early on, and then becomes sort of like the heart of the team in terms of like the only like optimist or one who like sees the like, you know, when they're all like in the woods and all their friends are dead and they're like covered in shit and blood, she's like, but when we get home, we'll have soup. And then they're all like, hooray. And so
in a different manga, she's the protagonist because she's a guileless simpleton.
Yeah. Totally. Yes, absolutely. So she has a dad, who we meet occasionally. And every time we meet him, he has like wisdom about the world, and he talks about the world in terms of a forest and a farm and nature. And his final, like, at least so far in the anime, his final like big moment is, like, Gabby tries to stab a member of his family while she's like undercover as a person on Paradise Island, and they're like just are trying to decide what to do about it. And he basically is like, look, all these children are being raised and let out into the dark woods, and the dark woods are full of monsters, and they get lost in these dark woods and start to think that like going in deeper into the darkness is like the direction to go as opposed to towards the light, and blah blah blah. And it's very clearly a metaphor for like these kids are born into this world of militarism and violence, and immediately that worldview colors what they think is good and bad and what they should do, and it takes them more and deeper into it as they live their lives. And that they get more and more lost, and then they just replicate this pattern onto eternity.
And to double onto that, Reiner has a quote that I think does this in like one line. He says, "When I went to the island, I thought I would see monsters. All that was there was people." And I think that like that line is the whole thing, right there.
Which leads to the other big theme, which I learned from your Wisecrack video, which is the friend-enemy distinction, coined by Nazi philosopher Carl Schmitt.
Yeah, let's talk about Carl Schmitt, a bad man,
bad dude. But you know, bad dudes can produce thought-provoking pieces of literature.
Schmitt is extremely interesting.
Or sons with incredible fast food franchises.
Exactly.
Yeah, Carl's Jr. is Carl Schmitt.
It's Carl Schmitt. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, it does get into that a little bit, just in terms of like the way that. Well, that's like social formation stuff, which also plays into this, right? That like the creation of friends and enemies justifies like the creation of the state, the in-groups, out-groups, the mobilization of violence, and that's used to create this sort of cycle of militarism. And so to get back to touch back to the arc of history thing, what Sasha's dad is saying, what Reiner's getting at in that sequence, what a lot of the ways in which the show pushes back on Schmitt are kind of getting towards, is this idea that the arc of history is an acting force that like manipulates and forces people towards actions, but that it's not necessarily inescapable. And that like the goal, like the ethical goal of like broad movements and like heroes and like people who are good is to fight to like break that pattern or like to escape that pattern.
And that's the broad thesis of this last part 2 season finale, is like there's this moment where I guess all the characters can just sit back and watch the nuclear holocaust go off, but then characters from every side of the war band together to try to do a suicide run to try and stop this.
They try to Star Fox it.
But there's a question. Is this Aaron's plan as well? Are they in control? Did he foresee this as well?
That's the tough part, because they've introduced this mechanic where, and it's kind of hard to explain on just a podcast, but like he has like a time travel mechanic where he can kind of loosely see what's happened in the past, present, and future, but only in flashes. And I think ultimately what stuff like this in anime usually means is like the distinction between like fate and free will to a certain extent. Like, are we destined to like be to nuke each other, or is there a slim chance that we can do the impossible and do something different?
Yeah, and that also, this is why the specifics of the ending are important to me, is that like, what does the world look like after? Because I have a vague sense of how it kind of has to end, based on sort of how stories work.
Yeah.
But the specifics of what the end state of the world is after that is very interesting to me, because in a world where everyone's still at war, then it sort of feels like that couldn't have been his plan. But in a world where everyone sort of, they figure their shit out somehow, then it feels like that could be his plan. But even that feels dubious to me, because like so I just a second ago mentioned like the friend enemy stuff in terms of like social formations, like cities and countries, whatever. Aaron also uses it as an individual case of identity formation, where he creates an identity of having to destroy titans for a very long time. And then when it turns out Titans isn't so bad and Marlians is bad, it becomes I have to destroy everyone who's not Titans.
Yeah.
And his identity eventually becomes constituted almost entirely on his desire to destroy and his willingness to do so. Which makes it hard to really think about a world where his end game isn't like a total ransacking of everything.
Here's what I will say. And what gets me into one of the fourth things that I wanted to, the fourth theme that comes throughout is the subversion of shonen manga arcs, where it takes this protagonist character from a shonen arc and imbues him with the qualities of other shonen protagonists. You know, he's not like... Well, actually, Eren is a bit more bellicose and angry than a lot of... He's more like a Vegeta than a Goku.
Well, he's kind of... I think a good comp for him is Yusuke Urameshi from Yu Yu Hakusho, who's kind of a punchy jerk-off, but ultimately pursues good things, except they obviously fuck with that a lot with Eren.
Or, he's a serious young man, maybe also like Kurapika from Hunter x Hunter as well.
Oh, God, we love Kurapika.
Who doesn't? Oh, Kurapika. Oh, mi corazón. And so one of the big consistent themes of shonen is I'm gonna save my friends. You know, we were talking about Kingdom Hearts.
Friendship. My friends are my power.
Yeah, my friends are my power. Exactly. And essentially, that's what Attack on Titan is all about. Eren is trying to save his friends, and would you do that at any cost? Is the thing that it asks.
I don't even think he's trying to save his friends anymore. I think that, like from the beginning, from the very first line of the series, he says that he feels like he's in a cage, and that like he'll do anything to not feel like he's in a cage anymore. And to me, that's like a very individual desire. Like I don't even think he's doing it for anyone else at this point except himself.
That's also such a great theme that recurs throughout is the meaning of freedom and how freedom is just totally contextual. Because you get to the end of Paradise Island and there's just ocean. There's just more stuff.
There's no more Titans left, and they've made it all the way to the ocean. But what's out there? There's more enemies. Yeah. Like, what was the theme again for this one?
What do you mean?
He was talking about the shonen anime arcs and the inversion of the shonen anime arcs.
Yeah.
Or how like the inversion of power creep as well. How usually you're happy when a character has power creep in a show, but in this show it's like no, don't have that happen.
Oh no, Eren has a hammer now. This is a disaster.
This is terrible.
Well, I think what the season 4 and this even started to happen for me in season 3 down in the cave. Like there's this sequence where like all of what's his face, what was Levi's mentor's name, that weird guy?
Kenny Ackerman.
So Kenny Ackerman.
Yeah,
what a great
Kenny
name.
Ackerman. He's down there in the ice cave with like his female like sidekick and then like a bunch of guys, and they're like barricading the door, and like it was the first time where like I was like, I don't know, like I don't want any of these people to die because like no one seems like a bad person here. Like and like then all of season 4 is that. Like when all these battles are going down, you're like not really sure who you want to win. You just find it tragic. Like on either way. So yeah, that was something that I thought is really powerful that you don't see enough in action and shonen in general. Usually it's you really want the hero to win and it seems impossible, but now the impossibility seems to be like peace.
Yeah. I mean, even Gabby literally gets like a classic shonen sort of character start, except it's inverted to instead of like someone kills someone she cares about, she kills someone she shouldn't have. And then it has to go through like the same kind of arc of growth and like learning and power and friend stuff. But like it starts off from like the darkest possible zone. Like instead of, it's like Demon Slayer where like Tanjiro's family gets killed and he's like, I gotta get stronger. It's like she kills someone and is like, oh no. I shot that lady right in the damn tummy.
And it's such a fascinating show because, you know, I love and I'm like so fucking hyped to be on this podcast where we can talk about this shit but I'm fully aware that at least 75% of the audience of Attack on Titan is just watching it for the action sequences and like the cool plot twist, and is like not cognizant at all of like the greater message that's going on here.
Yeah, it's a very smart, it's a surprisingly smart show. And before we get into the controversy over it, Steven, I wanted to ask you, you're an AOT novice. You've watched 2 episodes. What were your impressions just from watching the initial 2 episodes? I'm curious about.
Well, for the first 2 episodes, I'm like, oh man, another weak little boy with daddy issues. Because like it seems like every anime, there's like a weak little boy with daddy issues. Like
you're right.
I need to write something.
One Piece.
What if we do, Lux? What if we write something that's a strong guy with a mommy issue?
Ooh. That's what we need.
Yeah,
it's a big strong guy, and he goes from door to door trying to find his mom.
Yeah,
I think
but many houses are full of traps.
I'm so sorry, Steven. Continue.
The same mom as like it's like the same. Every shonen main character has the same mom, which is also very interesting.
Yeah.
She's kind of like Officer Jenny in Pokemon.
Yeah, exactly. Nameless brown-haired woman. Yeah.
But I don't know. My impressions from just like what I saw and reading about it is that something that isn't mentioned is like the Titans are being controlled by humans, right?
Kind of. They're
some of them.
Basically they're kind of being controlled by Ymir, but also there's sort of like a feedback loop between the Titans and Ymir.
Let me clarify that. There's mindless Titan. There's 2 classes. There's the mindless Titans that are just like, once they're Titans, they're forces of nature, basically. Mm-hmm. And then there are the 9 sentient demigod Titans. And those people do have motivations that are...
Yeah.
But they're not. They are a human who becomes a Titan. It's not
they like Gundam into it. They're like a human that transforms into it.
Yeah, they're bio Gundams.
That was sort of where I was going. It kind of reminds me of like mechs in a way.
It's a mech show, but with a bio element. And to be honest, like sort of this is something I'd love to talk about, but it is playing on the anti-Semitic trope of Jews can turn into monsters.
Yeah,
like Jews have big scary claws and scary jaws and like all those scary, all those tropes.
Well, it's the specific fucking anti-Semitism trope. Welcome to my area of expertise.
Lux's dad is a rabbi for anybody.
Yeah, that's true. a rabbi and a nerd.
Huge gamer.
Big gamer, big comics guy.
The gaming rabbi.
He really is. He's been on Gameboiz. Shouts out to Rabbi Jack. But the thing is like kind of blood libel stuff, right? 'Cause it's all about like they eat people. They like eat their blood. They eat their spinal fluid.
Yeah, the Jaw Titan especially looks like a Protocols of the Elders of Zion caricature.
Yeah, yes. Absolutely. And like... They also very, very much have this like the broad fear of them taking over the world in an inexplicable way. The part where it falls apart, obviously, is like the Jews take over the world thing is like we trick you guys into just giving us all this stuff with our like wily devil ways.
Yeah, we don't.
And in Attack on Titan, it's like they do it with pure punch power.
And I do want to get into that, but Steven, what were you saying?
About what now? About the mechs?
Yeah, you were just asking about them.
Well, that was just a connection I saw. I didn't have really much more to go on because I haven't even gotten to that part in the show.
I think the mech stuff is very canny, though.
It was interesting because when you said that it's like a biomech, that's what I initially was thinking. I was like, are they biomechs? Is there a little guy inside them pulling on the flesh and the bones?
There's a little man in their ass controlling.
Yes, the guy that crawled up in there.
Yeah.
But it's then as I read a little further, I was like, okay, no, they get it like an injection of some kind of special serum, and then they become the Titan. How do they transform out? How do they get back to human?
It's really cool how they just they pop out of the
steam.
neck like a
yeah.
Oh.
They're in the nape of the neck. The humans are located.
They're in the nape of the neck, so that's why when you kill Titans, you have to slice their nape. But of course, a lot of the demigod ones can like harden their necks and protect their necks. And
well,
stuff.
that answers another question of mine, which is why they were using swords sometimes. Because I was like, why they?
Well, one thing that's super interesting is like because the island got their basically their whole history and memories wiped. They're like technologically like backwards.
Okay.
and like are slowly adding technology, whereas like the outside world already has like cannons and guns, and like that stuff does play in interesting ways in the show too, when like certain people like have not fought against like a real army before and just get like destroyed. Like it's interesting.
Or like see a Zeppelin and just lose their fucking minds.
But there's also like a special crystal on the island that allows them to do the ODM gear.
They have a resource that's like oil, but it's like for their ODM gear. Yeah,
it's very funny, but that's also valuable, and that also comes into play. But it is like a mech anime too, because mech animes right from Gundam are all about colonies in the mainland fighting. It's all about wars between these displaced people. So I think it owes an obvious debt to Gundam especially.
Totally.
I think that's where we can get into the controversy Attack on Titan. We've talked about
let's go.
Are Eldians Jews? Are they Jews? Kinda, not really. They use a lot of the iconography of the Jewish oppression. For instance, Eldians in Marley have star-shaped armbands, which they have to wear to signify them as Eldians. I think
Lux just probably disconnected, but he'll probably be back. So just keep rolling.
And we're just going to keep rolling.
And this means that I get to now be the Jewish perspective.
Exactly. You are the Jew. You get the Jew hat.
Just like a Titan, I've aided Lux and absorbed his power. I'm now like naked and kind of balding.
Yeah. You have a lot of philosophy references. You have a lot of Lacan references that you can just pull out offhand. Isayama definitely uses, and Isayama seems like a guy, if he's not a fascist, which he probably is not, like a hardcore, I have no idea, who cares?
Sure.
But he's definitely a student of military history and a guy that definitely likes the uniforms of the Nazis, how some people are fascinated by that.
Let's start there. Likes the uniforms. I think that ultimately a big thing about bad faith critiques of the show, and not saying yours is bad faith, but the ones that I see that are bad faith about not only this show, but really any media in America right now, is that I think as audiences, we have a really hard time like confusing representation for endorsement. Like if I see this in a show, that means the creator is endorsing it because he's representing a TV show. We saw this with Game of Thrones with rape. People were like, why do the Game of Thrones guys love rape? It's like, well, rape was a big part of medieval social life for women. And to like erase that is to like erase the realities and struggles of what women in medieval ages felt. But showing that in the show is like, oh, we can't do that.
Yeah. Like the Nazi uniforms is like, that's probably not, but my dad, who's not a fan of the Nazis, he's conservative, but he's no fan of the Nazis, him, definitely likes constructing little Rommel tanks. And, he's one of those guys, he seems like one of those guys who just has that, he is very inspired by the aesthetic of military history. Right, not just because I think you could also see a lot of influence of like the American military in the Marleyans as well.
But my main point is that you can tell a story about fascism without being a fascist or whatever, or without it coming off as pro-fascist. It's like watching like Schindler's List and being like, "What's up with Spielberg?" It's like,
man, is this guy?
I've seen, and there's all these Nazi uniforms like everywhere in Schindler's List. Like, what do you think Spielberg was? Is he? Yeah. What's going on in his brain?
I think you're right. This is like a general trap of media literacy nowadays.
Yeah. It's a trap of media literacy, and I think it's disappointing because ultimately, outside of Attack on Titan, I think that a lot of Americans who are liberal or like want social justice feel like it's impossible in America. So the only things that they can get any traction on is the little stuff they consume, is their arts and media, because they can tweet at people, they could potentially get someone canceled or fired. And that seems to be the only way to have any kind of political expression or any feeling like you accomplished something. So as opposed to like activism, protest, or doing anything in the real world, like the only thing that we feel like we can get our political expressive juice out of is dictating like what's right or what's wrong in shows. And unfortunately that's spilled out into this like horrible thing where people are not even watching content, not even watching shows, and making insanely large judgments about them.
Yeah, I think this has happened with I see lots of people dismissing it outright as just fascist propaganda because they read a think piece or two, when it's much more than that. It's not, and it's not even really propaganda. But there is some evidence to suggest that Isayama is kind of a right-wing guy, and it might be a bit of a Japanese nationalist, but there's so many critiques of Japanese nationalism within Attack on, so many what seems like obvious critiques of Japanese nationalism in AOT, that I don't think he's like fully, fascist black-pilled or anything. I think he's probably a guy that was raised with conservative views about Japan and their role in World War II.
I actually think that in season 1 he was more right-wing than by the end of the show. When he was writing the manga, I think that I think he discovered stuff about his own humanity when writing this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I see what we were talking about now. I'm back from having an internet problem. But I think that his politics probably suck. Everything I've read about him and things he said seems like they suck. I don't think you go around just being like the Nanking Massacre wasn't that big a deal if you're not like a kind of a piece of shit.
Yeah.
But that doesn't preclude him from writing about, about alternate things, right? Like, for instance, one of the primary arguments people make about why Attack on Titan's fascist, when they make arguments that are more deep than, it have concentration camp.
Mm-hmm.
One of the deeper arguments is that the people who know what to do, the people who make the right choices, are always the army guys.
But that's not true at all. They frequently make the wrong choices.
Yeah, but also, that's one of the arguments is all the characters is army guys, so everyone who's right is army guys, but also everyone who's wrong is army guys. So this is a silly thing. Yeah. But the other sort of thing about that is that while that's to some degree true. Right, because some of the worst guys, your Rob Rices, etc., are non-army guys. Mm-hmm. But to the degree that's true. But then what's the way to put this? Depending on how the end, what the end state looks like, it's very easy to see this whole thing as being critical of just militarism as an institution. The fact that all these people are stuck in this military framework is a fundamental epistemological trap for basically all of them.
I'd also, this is the part where me and Lux differ, where Lux says that he has to kind of wait to see how it shakes out. I don't have to wait. I think that so much track has been laid on this road, especially in the final season, where pretty much every character except Eren has rejected the path of fascism.
Yeah,
so
it's
you can't do all that work and then be actually JK LOL.
But because they absolutely could though, right? Because what if the ending is at what Alex said, Eren saw all this coming all along, Mikasa and Armin kill him, and because they kill him after he's done all this stuff, the world is unified into this core central government, and the idea becomes, look, you just have to do one big violence to create a fascism, and then fascism stops the militaristic cycle.
It's It's way more ambiguous than that. That's what I'm gonna say. It's sure. The ending is The ending is pretty fucking ambiguous, which is what I think is its strength, actually.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm sure I believe that. But I'm just saying that's why I say I need to wait for the end, because I
guess you proved that there is a way to make it fascist.
There are outcomes that are not super far off from what the plot has already done that could end in a way that colors everything differently.
My point is that every character has had a speech about why they don't like it at this point, and it's be really weird to watch the show and still be on Eren's side, after all the work they've done.
Mm-hmm. I think another theme of the show that we didn't get into when we were talking about the themes is romantic love is weirdly a big, or love in general is a huge part of the show, and part of a sort of a force that works in tandem with that sort of grinding arc of violence, because people do violence out of love. That is, Mikasa defends Eren out of love. Ymir defends Historia out of love. And even the original Ymir, all of this violence is in service of her children. So there's this idea that, and it's something that's mentioned early on when Mikasa sees an insect eating another insect, but comments on how the world is cruel, but also very beautiful. Yeah. And that's sort of like, within this violence, there is something creative and sort of good feeling about engaging in this violence, but it sort of becomes strange and perverted over time. That tension between cruelty and beauty that you experience when you're trapped within this cage.
Yeah, I mean, that just reminds me so much, and this is like the somewhat obvious parallel to draw if you're a certain type of dork. Is like there are ways in which this story is definitely like reminiscent of sort of Yukio Mishima stuff. Yukio Mishima being like one of the best authors to ever do the damn thing, but also an absolute fucking psycho in terms of his politics. Famously tried to take over the Japanese government with a couple of his friends and a katana, and then committed seppuku in the office of the prime minister.
Also, maybe the most physically fit man to have ever existed.
Yeah. Also, apparently, had someone RP doing seppuku to him at a brothel and then busted a freaking nut.
He rules. Gay icon Mishima.
Oh my god.
Yeah. But his books are really incredible, and this tension of beauty and violence is like so present in there. And he's also a very right-wing Japanese nationalist guy. And I do that's where it gets kind of interesting, is this idea that there's a distinction, like there is such a thing as like a well-meaning fascism. I don't think it like exists actually in a material sense or is possible, but there is this idea of like, if the right noble people have control of everything, we can prevent all the violence from ever happening, and everyone will have a good life and it will be peaceful. And I do kind of think that one thing that I find interesting about both of them is that like that's never how it works in the story. Like those people always kind of fail, and I think that that's interesting, especially in the context of Attack on Titan, where it's like people, we were saying, call it a fascist text, but like Griffin was saying, the people who aspire towards this kind of fascist totalizing peace always end up kind of eating shit.
Eating shit.
Like, you know,
and are explicitly cast as villains.
Yeah, I think even if both authors are right wing, I think their abilities of artists have allowed them to see the limit of their views, and that's sort of what it's all about.
Or see past them, past them, even if they can't get out of them, but to like see past them. It is a fascinating thing in that way.
Another thing like that that reminds me of it is like The Dark Knight Returns, which is, a right-wing text made by a right-wing guy that's exploring the limits.
You mean Rises?
Yeah,
Returns,
the original.
The comic book.
The Frank Miller,
sorry.
He's an old Batman, fights young punks.
Because The Dark Knight Rises is a right-wing thing about how Occupy Wall Street was annoying.
Yes. The Dark Knight Rises fucking rules. The movie's awesome. It's so fucking stupid. I love it.
Yeah.
The court scene is so good.
The court scene is great. Yeah.
And Tom Hardy, the Bane voice outlasted that movie, so...
It's still hot.
Yeah, it's still hot. What do you think Attack on Titan is? Jews? Are they Jews in Attack on Titan? No, but okay, so here's another thing that I was cracking around. So I was mentioning this to Lux earlier on the Discord. It's funny how when you get to the geography of Paradise Island, where all the Eldians are exiled, it's Madagascar, and Hitler's original plan was to send the Jews to Madagascar.
Yes.
So that's like one clue. It's probably nothing. It's probably tenuous.
Which is also what that animated movie was about.
Yes, that's what Madagascar was about.
That's who the lemurs are. That's who the lemurs are.
They're voiced by Sacha Baron Cohen, our best Jew.
We like to move it, the Jews.
But I also think in sort of this sort of island population that is beset on all sides, I feel like Isayama is weirdly drawing this parallel almost between Israel and Japan.
Yes. Yeah, well, it's weird because it's like, there's so many different histories, and it's like your right-wing ideology can kind of be from different eras or whatever, and so it's like Israel now is like a huge it's popular on both sides of the American spectrum, but like right-wing people fucking love it, and Israel is like a right-wing state. So
it's an ethno-nationalist hell zone.
So it's impossible. It's impossible not to draw all those things. I think what's interesting is like there's like so many kind of like one-to-ones from different parts of history, which makes it more of a smush. And less of like this is exactly the Holocaust, this is exactly Korea, it's such an amalgamation.
If you're trying to draw a direct parallel, you're gonna have a bad time. It's like thinking about racism in Zootopia for too long, it's like what were they wait what wait, what is that? Doesn't make any but I think in this, I don't think Isayama intended this, but I actually do think it ends up being a accidental, canny critique of Zio-fascism, because so much of the line of Zionism was, we're this tiny little country and we're surrounded on all sides by enemies, which is why we need to, kill them all in order to have this manage this existential crisis. I think, Lux, you were talking earlier about how, like, the usual stereotype of the Jews is that we use our Bugs Bunny trickster wiles to, insert ourselves into places of power. But the exception of that is Israel, which does use punching in order to get what they want.
Which is why this is like a...
And Hollywood. I'm sorry.
No.
Well, that's true, because there's like a very popular, this is a weird thing, but a very popular Bible verse in like right-wing Israel circles is like the Phineas stuff, where he takes his big sword and like kills all the Canaanites and like does all this shit. And that is like so not a part of what American or like generally international left-wing like Jewish text, like people just never talk about that guy.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting that there is like one very small slice of Jewish history, or there's a very small version of the Jewish narrative that is very violent and very like punch powered. Like I was saying before, and Israel has like very much taken up that mantle as like a response to this perceived was Israel under attack by other countries? Like, yes. Was it a colonial project from the start? Also, yes. Like, what Israel's doing right now in 2022 is not ambiguous. They're evil, they're bad. The history is more complicated. Obviously, it's the plot of Attack on Titan. But like, I think you're right that there's a really strong parallel to this idea that if you are beset by enemy forces, that asymmetrical warfare is somehow justified or ethical. If we're imagining the Titans as nukes or whatever, or as Gundams, like that's a scale of weapon to which no one else has access.
Well, Israel has a nuke.
Right, that's what I mean. Right,
yeah,
like
about 400.
Israel has a bunch of nukes,
off the books.
Israel has a bunch of nukes. The countries around them, for the most part, do not have access to
I think we need to give Iran a Titan. I think we need to.
Yeah,
I think so. And maybe give Ilhan Omar one too.
Yeah, give her have her bite her thumb and she turns into a colossal Titan. Squishy's little Lindsey Graham. He's like, oh no.
Yeah, we need to let Iran build the Boucher Titan reactor.
I don't know much about Israel politics, but I do know that Rod Rice is Bibi Netanyahu.
You're right. He's also from King of Prussia, Philadelphia.
So one thing I want to say, because I know I'm a little harsh on people who like believe the show to be fascist or whatever, and I do want to say that I actually understand deeply like why people would get that impression, because he is like walking on all of these tightropes with it, and he's dangling a lot of things in front of you. And I think the big one that like we haven't talked a lot about is mentioned it earlier, but like the fact that they're like technically a race of people that have like monster blood in them and that can like turn into monsters, which is like a very anti-Semitic trope. And I think
just general fucking like anti-human trope, like people use not just with Jews, but with like black folks, monsters, like people all over the world.
Gamers. So what I think he's doing there is like a very dangerous but very interesting, where he's saying, let's say that every one of your racist tropes is true. Even after that, they're all still people. with emotions and motivations, and they can be hurt and are driven because they've been hurt. And I feel like that is really interesting to be like, okay, like let's say there's a group of people who can turn into monsters. They're just as much humans as everyone else still.
Yeah, and so that's also like why if you read the Eldians not as Jews but as Japanese people, and I'm super curious to like know what Isayama thinks about stuff like Unit 731. You know, because if you read it as like, oh, we're part of this people that can turn into monsters, but they were motivated by sort of this blind arc of history in order to do it, you know. I don't know if he would read it that way, but I think you can read it that way as this sort of self-critique of Japanese nationalism by saying that and like a Japanese nationalist would believe, we are people who are granted special powers. We have special powers. And sometimes we didn't use them all that great. Or maybe he doesn't believe that. I don't know. But I think you could do... like you said before, there's not just one reading of who the Eldian, what oppressed peoples the Eldians represent.
Of course.
Yeah, the historical correlates that the show, like you said, you're going to have a bad time trying to draw those out specifically. But I do think that the show in general does, I think, make this sort of argument that all of these things are sort of inevitable outcomes of kind of history and power without a sort of like Derrida-style rupture in the timeline. Mm-hmm. That, like, these things will keep recapitulating themselves in new and different ways.
Yeah.
Like, eternally until we can, like, you know, until somehow the cycle is broken and, like, the kids are, like, let free from the woods or whatever. Slash's dad would have you, you know, visualize it as.
I think it's also interesting that just how Titans just come about randomly because a blind girl enters a tree. I think it also talks about, that's an interesting parallel if you're reading the Eldians as Jews, how, like, you get institutional power randomly. There's no rhyme or reason to it, in the same way that Jews developed some institutional power because of usury laws in the medieval ages. And then that became the thing that they were associated with as a monstrosity. You know, I think that's sort of canny as well. The fact that people come by these great sources of power by chance.
Right, and that historical, and that chance has as much role in, like, historical outcomes as anything else, right? Like, World War I was going to happen no matter what, kind of, at a certain point, but, like Principe fucking was supposed to get killed by a grenade. The guy fucked up. Or rather, Ferdinand, was supposed to get killed by a grenade. The guy fucked up and then just happened to see him while he was eating lunch and got up and killed him.
Yeah, it's...
But, like, that's just, like, a weird parade pathing error that caused World War I to start when it did, as opposed to, like, 6 months later, which could have changed the nature of, like, so much stuff.
One guy shot at him, missed, then tried to shoot himself, and then couldn't, because I guess the gun jammed, and then, like, jumped off a bridge and broke both his legs, and then they caught him.
That ruled.
There's like 6 failed assassination attempts. They're all, like, Looney Tunes level. Like, things were just cool back then.
Parade pathing, very important. Kennedy as well.
Parade pathing is very important. But, like, any number of grand historical events have to do with, like, a million strange, weird incidents of, like, universal randomness. And I think the show kind of owns up to that this question of, like, who's responsible for the cycle of violence, like, which, like, did the Eldians start the problem, did the Marlins start the problem, blah, 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 is sort of an irrelevant question.
Yeah.
Because both like Griffin said, the people who are alive, the people who are alive have nothing to do with it. But not only that, but also that the events itself were caused by things that are so far out of the control of the people involved.
Of humans, yes, right, yeah.
No one and simultaneously everyone is in control of history, which is what is sort of an interesting thing about it.
Yeah. My last big thought I wanted to share was, I think this is the only good show about war right now. I don't think we have any good takes on war in any of our media, in our TV, in our movies, in our news. I mean, if we look at the time we're in right now with, like, Ukraine and Russia, like 95% of people in this country do not understand what a no-fly zone is, but they want one. Like, there's, like, a sincere need to think spiritually, emotionally, and like empathically about the concept of war in a nuanced way. And I wish there was more media that had these kinds of takes about war in them. I don't know what else you would find that in a show that's live right now.
Yeah. have as much good Vietnam era stuff as we did during Vietnam.
And I think that's really fucking important. And I do think that if someone gives me $1 billion to make the live action version of this, it will be the greatest show ever made.
I think that's very true. I think even most of our war documentaries, or even most of our even Schindler's List, the biggest movie about the Holocaust, is a happy ending, which many people have commented on as that's a little fucked up, Spielberg. Don't make a happy movie about the Holocaust. Don't make a happy Holocaust movie.
Yeah, get out of here, Steve. Take your Fievel and shove it right up your dumb little asshole.
He's a happy Jewish mouse. He's not a sad Jewish mouse. We need something that competes with Mickey. Damn it!
And by happy you mean gay?
Yeah, he's a gay Jewish mouse.
It's time for plugs, everybody.
It's time for plugs. What are your plugs?
Oh wow, abrupt turn. Hello, Steven.
Hi.
No, it's Griffin, say yours because I have to pull up a thing from an email to plug.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Griffin P. Davis, or check out my YouTube sketches, LOL. Griffin Patrick Davis on YouTube. Why don't you go check them out? Thanks, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Also, Choom Room. Plug Choom Room.
You know, Choom Room, I'm just shitposting there right now. I'm not doing anything of value there. So if you're looking to waste time, I'm there, playing games mainly. I used to be leading a political revolution like Hassan Piker. But then I realized that was pretty cringe and not as helpful as I thought. I will plug Mutual Aid LA and the DSA. Sign up for both of those. That's way more useful than starting a Twitch stream.
Yeah, I think we can all agree on that. I have a Twitch stream, which is useless and stupid, but it's called Pixel Goblins with me and my friend Forrest. It's very fun. We play games. Griffin and I have a podcast called The Gameboiz. You can check that out. Griffin and I also work at a YouTube channel called Wisecrack, so you can enjoy our videos. And I direct video for 3 different wrestling shows. So check out Party World Wrestling, Slam, Portal, and Fight Opera. And last but not least, my friend Christine is raising money for a abortion fund in Western Pennsylvania called the Western Pennsylvania Fund for Choice. And it's particularly important because Pittsburgh is a haven city for abortion, so it has a lot of access to necessary treatment that people can't get in nearby states like Ohio and Kentucky and whatnot. Even Western New York has some pretty fucked up laws. So if you have the ability to help out at all, it would be very dope to go to fund.nnaf.org/Queen Ozymandias and donate for abortion fundraising stuff.
Hell yeah. That's
please
good.
Do it.
All right. So, yeah, it turns out the real Titan was Republican pro-lifers.
Well, I mean, everyone.
Well, they are big, naked, and stupid.
Everyone has already made this comparison, but Marjorie Taylor Greene is the female Titan.
Yes, she looks very similar to the Titan that eats Aaron's mom. Yeah,
it's the jaw and the teeth spacing. Yeah. No, not the one that eats mom. Looks like
Annie. The female Titan.
The female Titan.
Oh, okay.
It's got all molars in front. Yeah. It's all molars.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is, if you guys want to cancel Marjorie, she will encase herself in crystal for 3 seasons.
Oh no! Da na 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 na.